My name is Arthur Hayes, and I never thought that at 63 years old, I'd have to face off against my own son, Leo. I've always been a simple man, dedicated to my craft as a carpenter for 40 years in my small workshop in Cleveland, Ohio. Now that I'm retired, I enjoy a quiet life on the savings I worked so hard to put together. Or at least I did, until Leo came back into my life, demanding control of my bank account, threatening me, and finally breaking my arm when I refused. What he doesn't know is that his greed will have consequences he never imagined. This morning I woke up early, same as always. Even retired, I can't shake the habit of a 5 a.m. start. I make coffee, read the paper, and then I sit in my small backyard workshop, restoring old furniture. It's just for pleasure now, and for a few neighbors who ask. It's a craft that has given me my identity for decades, and I don't want to let it go. My rough, calloused hands are a testament to a life of honest work. I was sanding an old cedar chest when I heard a banging on the front door. Loud, impatient knocks. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the few friends I have left don't usually show up unannounced. When I opened the door, I found Leo, my eldest son. I hadn't seen him in almost 8 months. He was thinner, with deep, dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy I knew all too well. "Dad, we need to talk," he said, pushing past me without waiting for an invitation. I immediately smelled alcohol in his breath, even though it was barely 9 in the morning. I followed him into the living room, wiping sawdust from my hands with an old rag. Leo collapsed onto the armchair, looking around as if he were sizing the place up. His presence filled my small house with a familiar tension, one that always arrived when he did. "How have you been, son? How's Theo?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation on safe ground. Theo, my 8-year-old grandson, is the only reason I still have any contact with Leo after so many disappointments. He's with his mother. "Listen, I don't have time for small talk. I'm in trouble. I need money." We'd been here too many times before. Ever since Leo turned 20, his life has been a constant string of bad decisions, abandoned us in debt. I tried to help him with his education. I offered him a job in my shop. I even bought him a small business that he ran into the ground in less than a year. Nothing ever worked. "How much do you need this time?" I asked, knowing any amount would be a drop in the bucket. "It's not that simple, Dad. This isn't about loans anymore. I need access to your account, to your savings." I froze, still clutching the rag. In all his years of asking for money, he'd never gone this far. "My account? Why would you need access to my account?" "I've got a business opportunity, something big, but I need capital. I know you've got it saved up. You've always been careful with money." "What I have saved is for my old age, Leo, and to help Theo with college when he's older." His face changed, an expression I'd seen before when frustration boiled over into anger. "Help Theo? What about helping me right now? I'm your son. And I've helped you many times, but this is different. I can't give you control over my life savings." He shot up from the chair, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "You don't get it. This isn't optional. I have people waiting for that money." A knot of fear tightened in my stomach. "What people, Leo? What have you gotten yourself into this time?" "Business, Dad, investments, but I need that money now. We can go to the bank today and make me a joint account holder. Simple, right?" The word came out of my mouth, firm and without hesitation. "No, I'm not doing that. If you need money for something legitimate, we can talk about a loan with clear terms, but I will not give you control over my account." His breathing grew heavier, his eyes darker. He stepped closer, invading my space. "You don't understand. I'm not asking for your permission. It's my money, Leo, money I earned working honestly for 40 years. Money you should be sharing with your family. What good is it doing sitting in a bank? What do you need it for? You're old." His words hurt more than any physical blow. I'd always worked with my family in mind, even after his mother left us when he was 12. I sacrificed so much to give him a decent life. "I'm not discussing this. My answer is no. If you want, I can lend you." I didn't finish the sentence. Leo grabbed the vase from the end table and hurled it against the wall. The sound of shattering ceramic echoed through the small room. "I don't want your pathetic loans. I want what's mine." I took a step back, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control. "You need to leave now, Leo. Come back when you've calmed down." I tried to move past him toward the door, but he grabbed my arm with a crushing grip. "I'm not going anywhere until I get a different answer." "I've already given you my answer. Let me go." His grip tightened. I tried to pull free, but at 63, I don't have the strength to fight a 38-year-old man. The struggle was brief. He shoved me violently, and I fell backward awkwardly, putting out my right arm to break the fall. The pain was immediate and blinding. I knew something had broken even before I heard the sickening snap. I lay on the floor, gasping in pain, clutching my arm to my chest. Leo stood frozen for a moment, as if surprised by his own actions. Then I saw something in his eyes that chilled me to the bone. It wasn't regret, it was calculation. "This could have been easier," he said, his voice cold. "Think about it while you're healing. I'll be back in a few days, and I expect a different answer. If you don't cooperate, maybe the next accident will be worse." He walked out, leaving me on the floor with a broken arm and a shattered heart. I couldn't believe my own son had done this to me, had threatened me over money. The physical pain was intense, but it was nothing compared to the pain of betrayal. Somehow I managed to get to my feet and find the phone. I called Jack, my lifelong friend who owns the auto shop 3 blocks away. He was there in less than 10 minutes and drove me to the hospital. On the way, I told him a modified version of the story, that I'd fallen while fixing a shelf. I wasn't ready to admit the truth, to confess that my own son had attacked me. At the hospital, they confirmed what I already knew, a fracture in the radius near the wrist. They put me in a cast that I'd have to wear for at least 6 weeks. The doctor, a young woman with kind eyes, asked me several times how the accident happened. I think she suspected it wasn't a simple fall, but I stuck to my story. Jack drove me home and offered to stay, but I assured him I'd be fine. I needed time alone to process what had happened, to decide what to do. Once I was alone, I sat in my favorite armchair, staring at the broken vase on the floor. The scattered pieces looked like my relationship with Leo. The vase had been a gift from my sister, Hope, years ago. Like our relationship, it was now shattered, perhaps beyond repair. My mind drifted to memories of Leo as a boy, running through the workshop, fascinated by the tools and the smell of sawdust. Where did I lose that boy? When did he become this man, capable of hurting his own father? I spent a sleepless night, the pain in my arm mixing with the anguish in my heart. By morning, I had made a decision. I would not give in to Leo's threats, but I wouldn't report him to the police either. Not yet. If I did, I would lose any chance of helping him, of salvaging anything of our relationship. And more importantly, I might lose contact with Theo, my grandson. Theo is a bright, sensitive boy. Since Leo and Renata separated 3 years ago, I've tried to be a constant presence in his life. I see in him the kindness and curiosity that Leo had at that age, before bitterness and resentment consumed him. I can't risk losing Theo too. On the second day after the incident, as I was fumbling to make myself something to eat with only one good arm, I heard another knock at the door. My heart raced, fearing it was Leo, back sooner than he'd promised. But when I opened it, I found Jack holding a bag of groceries. "Figured you'd be having trouble cooking," he said with a smile. Without waiting for an invitation, he came in and started putting food away in the kitchen. Jack and I have known each other since grade school. Our lives took similar paths, traditional trades, marriages that didn't last, and sons who gave us both joy and heartache. The difference is that his son, Steve, eventually straightened out and now works with him at the shop. I haven't been so lucky with Leo. As we ate, Jack watched me closely. "That bruise on your cheek doesn't look like it came from a fall, Art. You sure you don't want to tell me what really happened?" I hadn't even noticed the bruise. It must have happened during the scuffle with Leo. I looked down at my plate, avoiding his eyes. It was Leo, wasn't it? It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I nodded slowly, still not looking up. Shame kept me from meeting my friend's gaze. What kind of father raises a son capable of this? What kind of man lets his own son assault him? "You should report him," Jack said firmly. "This is serious, Art. This is domestic violence." "I can't. He's my son. And if I report him, I'll lose any chance of seeing Theo. And what if next time is worse? He already threatened you. He broke your arm, for God's sake." I had no answer for that. The fear of what Leo might do next was terrifying, but the fear of losing my grandson was even greater. At least you should talk to Renata, Jack suggested. Warn her. If Leo is this desperate for money, who knows what he might do? Renata, Leo's ex-wife, had always been kind to me. After the divorce, she made sure I still saw Theo regularly. Unlike many ex-daughters-in-law, she never blamed me for my son's failings. Maybe Jack was right. I should talk to her. I'll think about it, I promised, though without much conviction. Jack left after helping me clean up. He left enough food for 2 more days and promised to check back soon. His concern touched me, but it also made me feel more vulnerable, more aware of my age and limitations. That night, as I tried to find a comfortable position to sleep with the cast, I made another decision. The next day, I would go to the bank and transfer the bulk of my savings to a new account, one that Leo couldn't access, even if he managed to bully me into giving up my current account information. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it would buy me time to think. On the 3rd day, I barely slept. The pain in my arm was constant, but more disturbing were the thoughts of Leo, of what he might do when he discovered I'd moved the money. His threat of a next accident echoed in my head. I decided I should also change my will. Currently, Leo is my sole heir, but I could amend it to leave everything in a trust for Theo, with Renata as the administrator until he comes of age. Leo would never forgive me for this, but he had already crossed a line that should never have been crossed. With these decisions made, I felt a small measure of control returning to my life. Leo had underestimated my resolve. I may be old, and I may be alone, but I am not a weak man. I have overcome many hardships in my life. The poverty of my childhood, being abandoned by my wife, the years of raising Leo alone, the struggles to keep my business afloat. This new trial is perhaps the most painful, but I will face it too. As I looked at the picture of Theo on my nightstand, and one of the few possessions I truly value, I promised myself that I would protect him from his father's self-destruction. I will not let Leo drag my grandson down into his spiral of bad decisions and violent behavior. Theo deserves better, and I will make sure he gets it, even if it means confronting my own son for good. On the 4th day after the incident, I managed to get to the bank with Jack's help. As planned, I opened a new account and transferred most of my savings. The bank manager, a middle-aged woman named Carmen, noticed my cast and asked what happened. I told her the official story about the fall, but something in her eyes told me she didn't quite believe it. "Mr. Hayes, if you need help with anything else, don't hesitate to contact me directly," she said, handing me her business card. There was kindness in her eyes, but also concern. I wondered how many seniors like me she had seen in similar situations, victims of financial abuse by their own families. Leaving the bank, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. At least my savings were safer. Now, the next step was to see a lawyer about my will, but that would have to wait a few days. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. Jack dropped me at home and left reluctantly, only after I promised to call him if Leo showed up. I spent the rest of the day trying to keep busy, reading the paper, watching some TV, but my mind kept circling back to Leo and what would happen when he returned. I didn't have to wait long. That same evening, around 8 p.m., I heard his car pull up outside. The headlights briefly swept across my living room through the curtains before cutting out. I sat frozen in my armchair, my heart pounding. I wasn't ready to face him again. Not so soon. The knocks on the door were louder this time. I considered not answering, pretending I wasn't home, but I knew that would only make him angrier. With my good arm, I gripped my walking cane, a precaution I'd never needed to take with my own son before. I walked slowly to the door, taking deep breaths to calm myself. When I opened it, Leo pushed the door in, nearly knocking me off balance. His eyes scanned my fist and then my face, showing no remorse. "Have you thought about what we discussed?" he asked without any preamble, as if our last conversation had ended civilly and not with violence. "I have," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the fear. "And my answer is still no." His face hardened. "You didn't come to that conclusion on your own. Who have you been talking to? Who did you tell about our private conversation?" "No one. This is my decision. It's my money, Leo, money I earned with my own hands. I'm not just going to hand it over to you without any guarantees, without knowing what you really need it for. He took a step toward me, and I instinctively tightened my grip on the cane. He noticed the gesture and smirked. Now you're afraid of me, Dad, your own son. You broke my arm, I said simply, and you threatened me. Anyone would be afraid. He seemed to consider my words for a moment. Then his posture shifted, as if he'd decided on a new tactic. He slumped into the armchair, running a hand over his face in a gesture meant to convey regret. I'm sorry about that. I lost my temper. You know, I've never been good at controlling it. But I'm desperate, Dad. I really need this money. For what, Leo? What's so urgent that it justifies threatening your own father? He hesitated, as if calculating how much to reveal. I have debts, big debts, with people who don't take excuses. Gambling debts? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Gambling had been Leo's demon for years, an addiction that had destroyed his marriage and led him into ever-worsening situations. He nodded slowly. Among other things, but this time is different. These aren't casinos, these are dangerous people. The fear in his eyes looked genuine, and for a moment I felt a pang of compassion for him. Despite everything, he was still my son, the boy I once held in my arms. How much do you owe exactly? Almost everything you have saved, he admitted, confirming my suspicion that he had somehow looked into my finances. But it could work. If you give me the money, I pay them off, and then I'll work to pay you back, bit by bit. The same promise I'd heard a dozen times before. Money that never returned, plans that never materialized. I can't do it, Leo, no. This time I can help you find professional help for your addiction. I'm not asking for your psychological help, he yelled, jumping to his feet again. I need that money, or I'm going to end up dead. His words hung in the air, heavy with desperation. For the first time, I considered that maybe he wasn't exaggerating and that his life really could be in danger. But handing over my savings wouldn't solve the underlying problem. It would be like putting a bandage on a wound that needs surgery. We'll find another solution, I said with all the calm I could muster, but I'm not giving you control of my bank account. His face transformed again, the mask of regret falling away to reveal the rage beneath. I've been patient with you. I gave you time to reconsider, but I see you're still the same stubborn, selfish old man. He moved toward me menacingly, and I raised the cane in defense. But before he could do anything else, the sound of a car pulling up outside interrupted us. Through the window, I recognized Jack's truck. Leo glanced outside and cursed under his breath. This isn't over, he warned, heading for the door. I'll be back when you don't have your bodyguard. He left just as Jack was walking up the driveway. I saw them exchange hostile looks, but neither said a word. Leo got in his car and sped off with a squeal of tires. Jack came inside, his face etched with worry. Are you okay? I was driving by and saw his car, had a bad feeling. I thanked him, a lump in my throat. If he hadn't shown up, what would Leo have done? The thought terrified me. You have to report him, Art, Jack insisted. This isn't just about money anymore. This is about your safety. I knew he was right, but something inside me still resisted. Despite everything, Leo is my son. How could I, his father, be the one to send him to jail? Give me time, I pleaded. I need to think. I need to talk to Renata about Theo. Jack nodded, understanding but not convinced. At least don't stay here alone for a few days. Come stay with me and Steve. I considered his offer. Staying alone was dangerous, especially with Leo too so desperate. But leaving would mean admitting I was afraid of my own son in my own home, a house I built with my own hands, where every corner holds my work and my memories. I'll think about it, I replied, knowing I probably wouldn't accept. That night after Jack left, I checked all the locks and wedged a chair under the front doorknob. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. As I prepared for another restless night, I looked at Theo's picture again and made a decision. Tomorrow, I would talk to Renata. I needed to make sure my grandson was safe, and maybe she could help me better understand Leo's situation. With that resolution, I lay down, my arm throbbing painfully under the cast, reminding me that this situation had escalated from threats to real violence. How far would Leo go for money? And how far was I willing to go to protect myself and to protect my grandson? The next morning, I was startled awake by the phone ringing. The clock read just 7 a.m. With difficulty, I reached for it with my left hand, still clumsy from not being my dominant one. It was Renata, Leo's ex-wife. Her voice was tense, worried. "Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry to call so early. Are you okay? I heard about your accident." I was surprised she knew about my broken arm. I didn't remember Leo mentioning anything about my supposed fall. "I'm fine, Renata, just a little sore." "Who told you about the accident?" There was a pause on the other end. "Theo told me his dad said you'd had a fall and broken your arm. He was very worried about his grandpa." So Leo had told Theo about my injury, but maintained the cover story. I wondered what else he'd told my grandson and how much Renata knew about the real situation. "Could we meet today?" Renata asked, interrupting my thoughts. "There are a few things I'd like to discuss with you. I could stop by with Theo after school, around 2? Something in her tone alerted me. This wasn't just a courtesy call. "Of course, I'll be expecting you." After hanging up, I stared at the phone. Renata's call was no coincidence. Maybe Leo was pressuring her for money too, or perhaps she'd noticed something strange in his behavior. Whatever the case, it was a chance to talk to her about my concerns. I spent the morning trying to tidy up the house with one good hand, a frustrating task that constantly reminded me of my current vulnerability. Every limited movement was a reminder of Leo's violence, of how my own son had crossed a line I never imagined possible. At 2 p.m. sharp, I heard the familiar sound of Renata's car pulling up. Always punctual, one of the many qualities I appreciate in her. Unlike Leo, Renata has always been responsible and hardworking, holding a steady job as a nurse at the local hospital. Theo was the first one in, running to me with the carefree energy of an 8-year-old. He stopped short when he saw my cast, his eyes widening with curiosity and concern. "Grandpa, does it hurt a lot?" he asked, approaching cautiously as if afraid of hurting me more. "Just a little, champ," I assured him, bending down to receive his careful hug. "You'll see, in a few weeks, I'll be good as new." Renata came in behind him carrying a box of donuts from my favorite neighborhood bakery. Despite our complicated family situation, Renata has always been thoughtful, treating me more like a father than an ex-father-in-law. "Theo, why don't you go check out the new model cars I got for you? They're in my workshop," I suggested, handing him the key to the back door. I needed to speak with Renata alone. Once Theo was out in the yard, Renata's forced smile fell away. She sat across from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Mr. Hayes, I'm going to be direct. Did Leo do this to you?" she asked, gesturing to my cast. The question caught me off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Renata knows Leo well. She lived with him for 10 years, long enough to recognize his patterns of behavior. "Why would you think that?" I replied, evading the question. "Because I know him. Because he's been acting strange, more on edge than usual. And because I saw that look in his eyes before when he told Theo about your accident. It's the same look he had when he used to lie about his gambling debts." I looked down at my arm, the evidence of how far things had gone. There was no point in keeping up the lie anymore. At least not with Renata. "Yes," I finally admitted, "it was Leo. He came to ask for money. This time he wanted control of my bank account. When I refused, he pushed me. I fell badly and broke my arm." Renata closed her eyes for a moment, as if my confirmation was a physical blow. "I suspected as much. He's been desperate for money lately, more than usual. He's asked me for loans several times, each time for larger amounts." "Has he threatened you?" I asked, dreading the answer. She hesitated before responding. "Not directly, but he's hinted that if I don't help him, he might fight for full custody of Theo." The idea chilled me to the bone. Leo had never shown much interest in the day-to-day parenting of Theo. Using his own son as a tool for manipulation showed just how desperate he was. "Renata, I think he's in serious trouble. He mentioned debts to dangerous people." She nodded slowly. 2 nights ago, a couple of men came looking for him at my house. 2 men I'd never seen before. They looked intimidating. They asked for him, said they needed to discuss a pending matter. Luckily, Leo wasn't there, and Theo was already asleep. My concern for my son mixed with fear for Renata's and Theo's safety. If Leo's creditors had tracked him to his ex-wife's house, the situation was even worse than I imagined. "Have you considered reporting him?" Renata asked. "For your arm? It might be the only way to get him help. I've been thinking about it, but I'm afraid of the consequences for Theo. And to be honest, a part of me still sees him as my son, the boy I raised alone after his mother left us. Renata reached out and placed her hand on mine in a gesture of understanding. I get it. I felt the same way for years, justifying his behavior, hoping he would change. But Mr. Hayes, the people he's involved with now, they're not just casino loan sharks. They're dangerous. How do you know? Her eyes darted toward the back door where Theo had gone, making sure he was still outside. Because I found something in his car the last time he came to see Theo. A gun. The revelation left me breathless. Leo had never been into guns. In fact, I remember him being scared of firecrackers as a kid. That he was now carrying a weapon indicated a level of danger I hadn't considered. Are you sure? Did you see it clearly? I was looking for Theo's notebook that he'd left in the car. I found it under the driver's seat, partially covered, but it was definitely a gun. I didn't say anything to Leo. I pretended I hadn't seen it. We sat in silence, the weight of this new information settling between us. The distant sound of Theo playing in the workshop was a painful contrast to the gravity of our conversation. Mr. Hayes, I've been thinking, maybe we should leave for a while. Theo and I have a sister in Pittsburgh. We could stay with her for a few weeks until things cool down. The thought of them leaving saddened me, but I understood her reasoning. If Leo's troubles were as serious as they seemed, keeping Theo away was the smartest thing to do. I think that's for the best, I agreed with a heavy heart. When would you go? This weekend. I've already requested some time off from the hospital. I just came to tell you, and she hesitated again, to ask you to be careful. If Leo was capable of doing that, she said, pointing at my arm, we don't know how far he might go. Her words resonated with my own fears. The escalation of violence, from verbal threats to physical assault, suggested a dangerous path. There's something else you should know, I said, deciding to share my recent actions. I've moved most of my savings to a new account, and I'm planning to change my will, create a trust for Theo. Renata nodded in approval. That's the wisest move. I know Leo. He won't give up easily. We heard Theo approaching, forcing us to abruptly change the subject. The rest of the visit was a strange mix of light conversation and laughter with Theo, while Renata and I exchanged worried glances. Before leaving, as Theo said goodbye with a final hug, Renata whispered to me, I'll call you when we get to Pittsburgh. Please consider talking to the police. After they left, the house felt suddenly empty and silent. Too silent. The knowledge that Theo would be far away brought mixed feelings. Relief for his safety, but sadness at the distance. In recent years, his weekly visits had become the bright spot of my existence. I sat in my armchair, contemplating the situation. Renata's revelations had confirmed my worst fears. Leo was not only desperate, but also potentially armed and involved with dangerous people. This was no longer just about protecting my savings. It was now a matter of physical safety for all of us. I decided it was time to seek professional help. Not just a lawyer for the will, but also advice on how to handle the situation with Leo. I picked up the phone and called my old friend Jack. I need you to come with me tomorrow, I said. I'm going to file a police report. Jack sounded relieved. Finally coming to your senses. I'll pick you up at 9. That night was particularly difficult. Every sound made me jump. I imagined Leo returning, this time maybe with the gun Renata had seen. I wedged the chair under the doorknob, as had become my habit, and spent hours staring at the ceiling, remembering Leo as a boy, wondering where the road had gone so wrong. The next morning, Jack arrived on time. On the way to the police station, I told him about Renata's visit and her revelations, including the gun. This is more serious than we thought, he commented, his face reflecting my own concern. If he's mixed up with the kind of people I think he is, all of you could be in danger. At the station, we were met by Lieutenant Mike Riley, a middle-aged man with a serious but kind expression. He listened to my story with professional attention, taking notes and occasionally asking questions to clarify details. Are you sure you want to press charges against your own son, Mr. Hayes? He asked when I finished. I don't want to, I admitted, but I need to protect myself, and I need to protect my grandson and his mother. My son is out of control. Lieutenant Riley nodded sympathetically. I understand how difficult this must be for you. Here's what we'll do. First, we'll document your injury and take your formal statement. Then we can request a temporary restraining order while we investigate the case. Will a restraining order be enough? Jack asked, voicing my own doubt. If he's as desperate as he sounds, it's a necessary first step, the lieutenant explained. I'll also have patrol cars pass by your house regularly, Mr. Hayes, and I would strongly advise you to consider staying with a relative or friend for a while. The process was long and emotionally draining. I had to recount all the details of the incident again, this time officially. They took pictures of my cast and the fading bruise on my face. I signed statements and listened to safety recommendations. By the time we left the station, it was mid-afternoon. I felt physically and emotionally spent, but also a sense of relief. I had taken a step I never imagined I'd have to take against my own son, but it had become necessary. You're staying with me for a few days, Jack declared as he drove back. It wasn't a question. At least until they serve Leo with the restraining order and we see how he reacts. I was too tired to argue. I accepted his offer with a simple nod. We stopped by my house to grab some essentials, clothes, medication, and the picture of Theo I always keep close. As I packed my bag, I looked around my home with a sense of loss. I had never had to flee my own house before, not even during the worst times after my wife left. As we were leaving, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked half a block down the street. Two men were sitting inside, seemingly watching my house. When they saw me looking at them, the driver started the engine and drove away slowly. Do you know them? Jack asked, having noticed the car too. No, I replied, a chill running down my spine. But I have a pretty good idea who they might be. That night, I stayed in the guest room at Jack's house. His son, Steve, who was about 40, was also there. He greeted me with genuine respect and concern, reminding me of what my relationship with Leo could have been under different circumstances. The next morning, as we were having breakfast, I received a call from the police station. It was Lieutenant Riley. Mr. Hayes, we tried to serve your son with the restraining order, but he wasn't at his registered address. Do you have any idea where we might find him? The question caught me by surprise. I really didn't know where Leo was living now. After his divorce, he had moved several times, usually renting rooms or small apartments. The last I heard, he was renting a room over in the Ohio City neighborhood, I replied, but I haven't talked to him about where he lives for a while. I understand. We'll keep trying to locate him. In the meantime, the order is active. If he approaches you, call the number I gave you immediately. After I hung up, I shared the news with Jack and Steve. I don't like this, Steve commented, frowning. If they can't find him, he could show up any time, either not knowing he has a restraining order or knowing and deciding to ignore it, Jack added grimly. I spent the day helping out at Jack's auto shop, doing small tasks I could manage with one arm. Manual labor has always been my refuge, my way of processing thoughts and emotions. Despite my current limitations, I found some comfort in the routine of tools and the smell of oil and metal. In the afternoon, I received another call, this time from Renata. They had arrived safely in Pittsburgh and were settling in at her sister's house. Theo was excited about the trip, though he missed his father. The normality in her voice was a momentary relief. Have you heard anything from Leo? She asked, her voice dropping, probably so Theo wouldn't hear. Not directly. I filed a report and got a restraining order, but they haven't been able to find him to serve it. There was a worried silence on the other end. Be careful, Mr. Hayes, and please keep me informed. I will. You take good care of Theo. After 3 days at Jack's, I was starting to feel restless. I couldn't stay there indefinitely, depending on my friend's generosity. Besides, leaving my house empty for too long made it vulnerable to break-ins, or even to Leo deciding to visit in my absence. On the 4th day, I insisted on going back, despite Jack's protests. At least let Steve stay with you for a few days, he proposed as a compromise. I agreed, grateful for his concern, but determined to regain some independence. Returning home was bittersweet. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, but something felt different. Leo's betrayal had somehow stained the sense of security I had always associated with my home. Steve made himself comfortable on the sofa, turning the living room into a makeshift bedroom. His presence was comforting, though it was a constant reminder of why I needed protection. That night, while Steve slept, I lay awake, mentally replaying the events of the past week. My life had taken a dramatic, unexpected turn. From a quiet retiree enjoying his grandson in his workshop, I had become a victim of domestic violence, hiding in my own house, afraid of my own son. At some point, I must have fallen asleep in my armchair, because I woke with a start to a noise at the back door, the one leading to my workshop. I glanced at the clock, 2:37 a.m. "Steve," I called out softly, but there was no answer. I crept into the living room and saw he was still fast asleep on the sofa. Another noise, clearer this time. Someone was trying to force the lock on the workshop door. My heart began to pound. I shook Steve awake. "Someone's trying to get in through the workshop," I whispered. Steve was instantly alert. Without making a sound, he grabbed his phone and dialed 911, explaining the situation in a low voice. "They're on their way," he informed me after hanging up. "You stay here, I'll go check." "No," I stopped him. "It's my house, we'll go together." Armed only with a flashlight and a hammer Steve grabbed from my toolbox, we cautiously approached the door connecting the house to the workshop. The noises had stopped, but we could feel a presence on the other side. With a swift motion, Steve threw open the door and flicked on a flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness of the workshop. At first, we saw nothing. Then a movement in the shadows caught our attention. The figure of a man was scrambling toward the exterior door. "Stop!" Steve yelled, moving forward. "The police are on their way." The intruder paused, turning toward us. In that moment, the flashlight beam hit his face, and I felt the world stand still. It was Leo. His expression was a mixture of shock and something darker. Something I almost didn't recognize in the son I had raised. Our eyes met for an instant, and I could see that something fundamental had changed in him. His eyes were empty, as if the person I knew had been replaced by a stranger. "Leo," I started to say, taking a step toward him. His hand moved quickly to his waistband, and to my horror, I saw him pull out what looked like the gun Renata had described. He pointed it unsteadily in our direction. "Stay back," he ordered, his voice trembling. "I just came for what's mine." "Put that down, Leo," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear gripping me. "We don't need any more trouble." "Trouble, guy?" He laughed humorlessly. "You know what trouble is? Having people hunting you down to kill you because you owe them money. That's trouble." "We can talk about this," I offered, taking another cautious step. "Find a solution. Together." "There is no solution," he replied, his voice breaking. "Not unless you give me that money. It's the only way." Just then we heard the approaching wail of sirens. Leo's expression shifted to one of panic. "You called the cops?" he asked, his voice rising with disbelief and rage. "On your own son?" "Leo, please, put the gun down," I begged. "Don't make this worse. Let us help you." For a moment he seemed to consider my words. I saw a flicker of the boy he once was, vulnerable, looking for guidance. But as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. "It's too late for that," he muttered, backing toward the rear door. "This isn't over." Before we could react, he bolted out into the night. Steve made a move to follow, but I stopped him. "It's dangerous," I warned. "He has a gun, and he's desperate." Minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived. We explained what had happened, describing Leo and mentioning the gun. They began a search of the neighborhood, but I had a feeling they wouldn't find him. Leo knew these alleys like the back of his hand from when he was a kid. If he didn't want to be found, he knew how to disappear. Lieutenant Riley arrived shortly after. He listened to our account with a grave expression. "This changes things," he commented. "Attempted burglary, possession of a firearm, making threats. These are serious felonies, Mr. Hayes. We're past a simple restraining order now." I nodded, the full weight of the situation settling on my shoulders. My son was no longer just a man with financial and anger issues. He was now an armed fugitive, potentially dangerous. "I'm assigning a permanent watch to your house for the next few days," the lieutenant continued, "and I'm going to suggest it again that you consider staying somewhere else temporarily." "No," I replied firmly. "I'm not running from my own home. Besides, now that he knows we're on alert, I doubt he'll be back soon." Lieutenant Riley didn't look convinced, but he respected my decision. Before he left, he handed me his personal card. "Call this number directly if you see your son or if anything suspicious happens. I don't care what time it is." After the police left, Steve and I stayed up for the rest of the night. processing what had happened. The image of Leo holding a gun, pointing it in my direction, replayed in my mind like a recurring nightmare. I never thought it would come to this, I confessed to Steve, my voice cracking slightly. Where did I lose my son so completely? Steve, who is about the same age as Leo but has followed such a different path, looked at me with compassion. It's not your fault, Mr. Hayes. Some people just make bad choices, no matter how good their parents are. His words were meant to comfort me, but the feeling of failure as a father was overwhelming. I remembered the countless hours I spent teaching Leo in my workshop, trying to pass on not just a trade but values, honesty, hard work, responsibility. Somewhere along the way, those lessons had been lost. At dawn, I called Renata to update her. She listened in silence, interrupting only with an occasional question. Thank you for letting me know, she said finally. We'll be on alert in case he tries to contact us. How's Theo? He's okay. He misses you and asks about his dad. I told him we were on vacation, but he's a smart kid. He knows something isn't right. The mention of Theo brought a new level of worry. What if Leo, in his desperation, tried to use his son as leverage? Would he be capable of putting his own child at risk? Keep him close, I advised Renata. And if Leo contacts you, let me know immediately. The following days passed in a strange, tense calm. There were no more break-in attempts, no sign of Leo. The patrol cars passed by my house regularly, and Steve continued to stay with me, though we both knew he couldn't do it forever. He had his own job and responsibilities at his father's shop. A week after the night incident, I received an unexpected call. It was Maria Sanchez, a social worker from the county. She had been contacted by Lieutenant Riley about my situation. Mr. Hayes, I'd like to meet with you to discuss support options, she explained. Cases like yours are more common than people think, and there are resources available. We agreed to meet at my house the next day. When she arrived, I was surprised by how young she was, probably Leo's age, but she had a calming, professional presence. During our conversation, Maria told me about support programs for elderly victims of abuse, legal options beyond restraining orders, and resources for people with addictions like Leo's. Pathological gambling is a disease, she explained. Your son needs professional help, but first he has to admit he has a problem. That usually only happens when they hit rock bottom. And what if that rock bottom involves violence? I asked, voicing my greatest fear. What if he hurts someone else before he seeks help? That's why it's so important is to maintain the boundaries you've set, she replied firmly. The police report, the restraining order, these are necessary steps not only for your protection, but also to eventually help your son. Her words made sense, but they didn't lessen the guilt and pain I felt. At the end of our meeting, Maria left me several pamphlets and her business card. Call me anytime you need to, she offered. And remember, you're not alone in this. After she left, I stared at the pamphlets on the table. One was specifically about gambling addiction. When the game stops being a game. The pictures showed broken families, shattered relationships, exactly what had happened to ours. Steve came back that afternoon with a container of food his mother had made. In his 40s, he had never married, dedicating his life to the family business and caring for his parents. Another example of how sons' lives can take such different paths, even with similar upbringings. My dad says I can stay a few more days, he informed me as we ate. But I'll have to get back to the shop full-time next week. We've got a lot of cars waiting for service. You've done more than enough, I assured him. You can't put your life on hold for my problems. I'll be fine. But that night, as I tried to sleep, I wondered if I really would be. The threat of Leo still loomed. This isn't over. Knowing his stubbornness, I knew he wouldn't give up easily, especially if he was as desperate as he seemed. The next day, I got a call from the bank. It was Carmen, the manager who had helped me transfer my savings. Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry to bother you, but something happened that I think you should know about, she began, her tone worried. A man came in yesterday asking about your account. He claimed to be your son and was acting as your caregiver. He said you'd had an accident and needed access to your funds for medical treatments. My heart sped up. Leo was trying to get to my money through other means. Did you give him any information? I asked, dreading the answer. Of course not, she replied, sounding almost offended at the suggestion. We have strict protocols, but he was very insistent. He even became aggressive when we told him he would need you to be present with authorization. I thanked her for the warning and briefly explained the situation, omitting the most painful details, but making it clear that my son was not authorized to handle any of my affairs. I'll place a high security alert on your account, she offered, and if he comes back, we will notify security and the authorities immediately. After hanging up, I called Lieutenant Riley to inform him of Leo's latest attempt. He took note of the information, promising to send officers to the bank to review the security footage. This will help us track him down, he explained. If we have recent images, it will be easier for patrols to identify him. I felt trapped in a never-ending nightmare. My own son, whom I had raised with so much effort and love, was now wanted by the police. Each new attempt on his part only confirmed how desperate he was, and I wondered what he would try next. That same afternoon, I received another call that made my blood run cold. It was Renata. Her voice was trembling and barely audible. "Mr. Hayes," she whispered, as if afraid of being overheard. "Leo is here, in Pittsburgh. He came to my sister's house." I shot up from my chair, all drowsiness vanishing. "Are you and Theo okay?" "Yes, for now. He's talking to Theo in the backyard. He doesn't know I'm calling you." "How did he find you?" "I don't know. Maybe he still had contact with my sister, or maybe Theo told him something on the phone. The point is, he's here, and he seems different, calmer, but in a disturbing way." "Renata, listen to me very carefully," I said, trying to stay calm. "Call the police immediately. They have a warrant for his arrest." "I can't do that with Theo here," she objected. "He'd see his father being arrested. He'd never get over that trauma." I understood her concern, but the risk was too great. "Renata, Leo has a gun. We don't know what he's capable of in his current state." There was a silence on the other end. "I know," she finally admitted. "I saw it tucked under his jacket when he arrived." Fear completely took over. Leo, armed near Theo and Renata in an unpredictable mental state. It was the worst-case scenario. "I need you to promise me something," Renata continued. "If anything happens to me, you'll take care of Theo. You'll make sure he's okay." "Renata, don't talk like that. Nothing is going to happen to you." "Just promise me," she insisted. "I promise. But please call the police. If you don't want Theo to see it, find a way to get him away first. But don't put yourself at risk." "I'll try it. I have to go now. They're coming back inside." The call ended abruptly, leaving me with a feeling of absolute helplessness. I was hundreds of miles away, unable to protect my grandson and his mother from the danger that my own son represented. I immediately called Lieutenant Riley, urgently explaining the situation. He promised to contact the authorities in Pittsburgh to dispatch officers to the address I provided. "Stay on the line if you can," he requested. "I'll put you on speaker while we coordinate." The next few minutes were torture. I listened as the lieutenant spoke with his counterparts in Pittsburgh, giving descriptions, explaining the situation. The police bureaucracy had never seemed so frustratingly slow. Finally, he informed me that a patrol car was en route. "They should be there in about 10 minutes. Have you had any other contact with your former daughter-in-law?" "No," I replied, my anxiety growing with each passing minute. "I've tried calling her back, but she's not answering." "Stay calm, Mr. Hayes. We're doing everything we can." But calm was impossible. The most terrible scenarios played out in my mind. Leo losing control, the gun going off, Theo witnessing violence, or worse, being a victim of it. After what felt like an eternity, the lieutenant received an update from his colleagues in Pittsburgh. I heard only his side of the conversation. Phrases like, "Are you sure?" and "They checked the whole house." That did nothing to reassure me. When he finally spoke to me, his tone was cautious. "Mr. Hayes, the police arrived at the address. They found your former daughter-in-law and your grandson. They are both safe." I felt a wave of momentary relief. And Leo? He wasn't there. According to Ms. Mendoza, he left just a few minutes before the police arrived. It seems he suspected something was up. The relief was replaced by a new worry. Leo was still out there, probably more desperate than ever and potentially furious at being tricked again. "The Pittsburgh police have assigned protection to your former daughter-in-law and grandson," the lieutenant continued, "and they're searching for your son in the area. But if he comes back to Cleveland, he might come looking for me." I finished his thought. "Precisely. We're increasing surveillance on your home, but I must insist that you consider staying somewhere else temporarily." This time I took his advice. Leo's trip to Pittsburgh showed an escalation in his desperation. If he was willing to travel hundreds of miles to intimidate Renata, he wouldn't hesitate to confront me again. I called Jack and explained the situation. Without a second's hesitation, he insisted I come stay with them again. "I'm not taking no for an answer this time," he declared. "Steve will be over to pick you up in half an hour. Pack enough for several days." As I packed a small bag, I felt like a fugitive in my own life. I had always been an independent man, proud of my ability to take care of myself even in old age. Now I was depending on the protection of friends and the authorities running from my own son. Steve arrived on time and helped me with my bag. Before we left, I walked through my house one last time, wondering when I would be able to return, if I would ever be able to return with peace of mind. At Jack's house, I was again given the guest room. His wife, Dolores, welcomed me with her characteristic warmth and discretion, not asking uncomfortable questions, but making sure I had everything I needed. That night, I was able to speak with Renata on the phone, now calmer. She told me more about Leo's visit. He just showed up, unannounced as always. Theo was happy to see him, of course. Leo was acting strangely normal. He played with Theo, brought him a gift, chatted about school, but his eyes were different, like he was somewhere else, even while he was smiling. "Did he say anything to you when you were alone?" "He asked about you, about your arm. He said it was an accident, that you had misunderstood his intentions. Then he mentioned he needed money urgently to pay off some people. When I told him I didn't have that kind of money, he suggested that maybe I could help convince you." The pattern was consistent. Leo seeking access to my money by any means necessary, manipulating those around him. When he realized I wasn't going to cooperate, he changed. His voice got colder, more threatening. He said something like, "You people don't understand what's at stake. There will be consequences for everyone if I don't get that money." That's when I called you. I think he saw me on the phone in secret because shortly after, he said he had to go, that he'd be back soon. "How's Theo?" I asked, worried about how my grandson might have interpreted his father's strange behavior. Confused, he asked a lot of questions after Leo left. He wanted to know why his dad was acting weird and why the police came afterward. I explained that his dad is going through a tough time and that sometimes adults need special help. I don't know if it was the right thing to say, but I didn't want to lie to him completely. "You did the right thing," I reassured her. "Theo is smart. He would have sensed any obvious lie." We continued to talk about the security arrangements. The Pittsburgh police had assigned patrol cars to watch her sister's house and had given her a direct number for emergencies. They were also considering returning to Cleveland, where Renata had her job and Theo had his school, but with added protection. At the end of our conversation, Renata mentioned something that deeply disturbed me. "Mr. Hayes, there's something else you should know. When Leo was playing with Theo in the yard, I overheard him asking Theo about your house, about whether you had changed the locks or if you had anyone staying with you. He was trying to get information through Theo. The idea of Leo using his own son to gather intelligence sickened me. It was a new level of manipulation that showed just how far he was willing to go. The following days were a tense wait. I stayed at Jack's, only leaving for necessary appointments, like my doctor's visit to check on my arm, always accompanied by Steve or Jack. Lieutenant Riley called daily to report no sign of Leo, which, instead of calming me, only increased my anxiety. His absence meant he could be planning something. A week after Leo's visit to Pittsburgh, Renata called with unsettling news. They had found signs of a forced entry at her apartment in Cleveland. Nothing was stolen, as the place was mostly empty since she left for Pittsburgh, but it was clear someone had been there, rummaging through drawers and closets. "The police think it was Leo," she said. "They're reinforcing surveillance, but this confirms he's still in the city." The news left me uneasy. If Leo was back in Cleveland and going through Renata's apartment, he had probably been by my house as well. The idea that he might be watching us, waiting for an opportunity, stole my sleep. That night, as we were having dinner at Jack's, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, hiding, fearing every shadow, every sound. I needed to confront the situation more proactively. "I'm going to contact Leo," I announced. Jack dropped his fork. looking at me as if I'd lost my mind. Are you crazy? The man broke your arm, threatened you with a gun, and has been stalking your family. And you want to talk to him? Not directly, I clarified, through Lieutenant Riley. I want to offer him a deal. If he turns himself in voluntarily and agrees to treatment for his addiction, I'll help him with a portion of his debts. Art, Dolores interjected in a motherly tone, that money is all you have for your retirement. You can't just give it to someone who has proven to be so irresponsible. I'm not talking about giving him everything, I explained, just enough to relieve the immediate proter with strict conditions. He's my son, despite everything. If there's a chance to help him straighten out his life, I have to try. Jack shook his head, clearly disagreeing, but respecting my decision. It's your money and your son. I just hope you're not throwing both of them away. The next day, I laid out my plan to Lieutenant Riley. He listened intently, not interrupting, his expression professionally neutral. I understand your motives, Mr. Hayes, he said when I finished, and I respect your desire to help your son. But I must warn you, people in Leo's situation rarely respond to these kinds of offers as we hope. His addiction and the pressure from his debts can cloud his judgment. I know, I admitted, but I have to try. It's the only way I can live with myself. The lieutenant nodded understandingly. We'll try to contact him through available channels, but I can't guarantee he'll respond or accept your terms. I understand. Just do what you can. The following days were an agonizing wait. The lieutenant informed me that they had put out a message for Leo through various sources, including known associates and places he frequented, indicating that his father wanted to negotiate a peaceful solution through the police. Meanwhile, my arm was slowly getting better. The doctor said they might be able to take off the cast in another 2 weeks, a piece of good news that contrasted sharply with the Dark family situation. Renata and Theo returned to Cleveland, temporarily moving into a different apartment provided by the Victim Protection Program. Theo was back in school, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, albeit with extra security measures. Finally, 10 days after we initiated the contact attempt, Lieutenant Riley called with news. Mr. Hayes, we've had a response from your son. He's willing to meet, but he has conditions. What conditions? I asked, a mix of relief and apprehension coursing through me. He wants to see you in person. Just the two of you. No visible police. That's too dangerous, Jack objected from beside me. He's armed and desperate. Of course, we wouldn't allow a meeting without adequate protection, the lieutenant assured me. The meeting would be in a public place of our choosing, with plainclothes officers observing discreetly. It's the best we can offer under the circumstances. I considered the options. It was risky, no doubt, but it was also the first sign that Leo was willing to talk, instead of just acting impulsively. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to resolve this without more violence. All right, I finally agreed. When and where? Tomorrow at noon, at the cafe in Central Park. It's a busy place, but with enough open space for us to maintain control of the situation. I barely slept that night, mentally rehearsing what I would say to Leo, how I would try to talk sense into him. I thought about the good years, when he was a curious and loving boy, before the problems started. Was any of that boy left in the desperate man he had become? The morning came too soon. I dressed carefully, choosing comfortable clothes that wouldn't hinder my movement, aware that I might need to react quickly. My casted arm was a constant reminder of what was at stake. Jack insisted on driving me to the park, though he couldn't join me for the meeting itself. Be careful, he warned for the umpteenth time as he dropped me off. And remember, the police are nearby. The cafe was moderately busy, with several families enjoying the sunny day. I recognized 2 men who had to be plainclothes cops by the way they discreetly scanned their surroundings, one near the entrance and another at a table in the back. I sat at a central table, visible from all directions as instructed. I ordered a coffee I had no intention of drinking, just to have something to do with my hands while I waited. At 12:05, I saw him walk in. Leo looked thinner than the last time, with deep-set, hollow eyes and an expression of constant alertness, like a cornered animal. He scanned the room quickly, probably trying to spot the cops, before walking toward me. He sat down across from me without a greeting, his eyes fixed on my cast for a moment before meeting mine. In them, I saw something I didn't expect. Fear. Not just the fear of being arrested, but a deeper, more fundamental fear. You came alone, he observed, his voice low and tense. As we agreed, I replied simply, though we both know there are officers watching. He nodded slightly, a humorless smile twisting his lips. Of course, my own father, cutting deals with the police to trap me. I'm not trying to trap you, Leo. I'm trying to help you. Help me? He repeated with disbelief. By reporting me, getting a restraining order, hiding Renata and Theo from me? All of that was a consequence of your actions, I replied, keeping my voice calm despite the tension. You broke my arm. You broke into my house with a gun. What did you expect me to do? His gaze flickered away for a moment, a flash of shame crossing his features before his expression hardened again. I didn't mean to hurt you. It was an accident. An accident that happened because you were threatening me for money, I pointed out. And then you continued with more threats. To me, to Renata. That's not the behavior of someone who regrets an accident. Leo leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower. You don't understand the situation I'm in. These people, they're not people you can negotiate with or ask for more time. You either pay or you suffer the consequences. And not just me, but everyone around me. Is that why you've been so desperate? Have they threatened you? He nodded slowly. They're past threats. They gave me a beating last week as a warning. Next time they said it would be permanent. For the first time, I noticed the semi-healed bruises on his face, partially hidden by a few days' worth of stubble. The image of my son being beaten, regardless of his mistakes, stirred a wave of paternal protective instinct. How much do you owe exactly? I asked. More than I can get on my own, he admitted, close to $50,000. The amount shocked me. It was a substantial sum, a significant chunk of my life savings, but it was also less than I had feared, given his level of desperation. What if we pay part of it now to buy some time, I suggested. I could give you $20,000 with conditions. His eyes lit up with hope for the first time, but it quickly turned to skepticism. What conditions? You turn yourself in voluntarily. You agree to treatment for your gambling addiction, and we work with the authorities to resolve the rest of your debts legally. Leo's expression darkened. I can't turn myself in. I have pending charges. I'll go to prison. Probably, I conceded, but with your cooperation and by showing a willingness to rehabilitate, we could negotiate a reduced sentence, and you'd be safe in the meantime, away from these creditors. Leo shook his head vehemently. No, not prison. I'll find another way. There is no other way, son, I said with all the gentleness I could muster. You've tried everything else and you've only made things worse. It's time to accept the consequences and start to rebuild. His gaze hardened, desperation replacing fear. You're just like everyone else. You don't get it. I need that money now. No conditions. You know I can't do that, I replied firmly. I would only be feeding your addiction and postponing the inevitable moment when you have to face your problems. Leo shot up from his chair, its legs scraping against the floor. I saw one of the plainclothes officers tense up, ready to intervene. Then there's nothing more to talk about, Leo declared, his voice cold and distant. I thought you actually wanted to help me, but you just want to control me, like always. Leo, please, I tried one last time. Think about Theo. What kind of example are you setting for him? What kind of future are you offering him by continuing down this path? The mention of his son seemed to get through to him for a moment. I saw a flash of genuine pain in his eyes before the mask of toughness fell back into place. I'll take care of my son my own way, he replied, without your interference or your conditions. With those final words, he turned and walked quickly out of the cafe. One of the officers followed him discreetly while the other approached my table. Are you all right, Mr. Hayes? He asked with genuine concern. No, I answered honestly, a crushing weight settling in my chest. I am not. The meeting had been a failure. Instead of bringing Leo to his senses, it seemed to have pushed him further away, fueling his resentment and desperation. And something about his final words left me deeply unsettled. I'll take care of my son my own way. It sounded dangerously like a threat, or at least a prelude to some drastic action. As the officer escorted me back to the car where Jack was waiting, I couldn't help but wonder what Leo would do now that his last apparent option had been exhausted, and who the next victims of his desperation would be. The failure of my meeting with Leo left me deeply disturbed. During the drive back to Jack's house, I couldn't stop thinking about my son's eyes. That mix of desperation and determination that foretold something terrible. His last words, "I'll take care of my son my own way," kept echoing in my mind like a veiled threat. As soon as we arrived, I called Lieutenant Riley to share my concerns. I explained my fear that Leo might try something involving Theo, perhaps even take him. "I understand your concern," the lieutenant responded. "We'll increase surveillance at Ms. Mendoza's new residence and at the boys' school. We'll also alert the school administration to be on the lookout for any attempt by Leo to approach Theo." Despite these assurances, the fear lingered. I knew my son, his stubbornness, and his capacity for impulsive action when he felt cornered. I decided to call Renata to warn her directly. I told her about our meeting, omitting no details. Her silence on the other end of the line only amplified my anxiety. "I won't let him take Theo," she finally stated, with a firmness I'd never heard in her voice before. "I've already spoken with the school. They know only I am authorized to pick him up, and they have pictures of Leo with instructions to call the police immediately if he shows up." Her words partially reassured me, but we both knew that Leo could look for other opportunities, other places. Life doesn't happen only between home and school. There are parks, stores, friends' houses. It's impossible to watch every space. The next few days were a torturous wait and uncertainty. I stayed at Jack's house, following police recommendations, though the inactivity was becoming harder and harder to bear. My arm was slowly improving, but the constant worry affected my sleep and appetite. On the 5th day after our meeting, I received the call I had been dreading. It was Renata, her voice broken by sobs. "Mr. Hayes, Theo's gone. He took him." The world seemed to stop. A coldness started in my chest and spread to my limbs. "When? How?" Between sobs, Renata explained that Theo had gone to play at a classmate's house after school. The child's parents were supposed to bring him home, but when they called, they said a man had introduced himself as Theo's uncle, showed an ID, and claimed he was there on Renata's behalf to pick him up early. Suspecting nothing, they had let Theo go with him. "The police are already looking for them," Renata continued. "They have a description of the car he used, but it's been almost 3 hours, and there's no sign of them." My mind raced to process what had happened while trying to remain calm so as not to increase Renata's distress. "Has he contacted you? Has he asked for anything?" "Nothing," she replied, her voice trembling. "His phone is off. I'm terrified, Mr. Hayes. What does he want with this? What does he plan to do with Theo?" It was the question that tormented me as well. Was Theo a hostage to get the money I had denied him? Or had Leo, in his desperation, simply decided to run away with his son? I promised Renata I would go to the police station immediately and then meet her. After hanging up, I found Jack already ready to drive me, having overheard enough of the conversation to understand the gravity of the situation. At the station, Lieutenant Riley was personally coordinating the search, maps spread out, officers receiving instructions, constant radio communication. The police machinery was in full swing, but the lieutenant's tense expression did not bode well for immediate results. "We've issued an Amber Alert," he informed me. "All law enforcement agencies in the state are on alert. We've also notified authorities in neighboring states in case he tries to cross state lines." "Have you tracked his phone?" "We've tried, but it's been off since he took the boy. The last ping we got was near the classmate's house. After that, nothing." I let the lieutenant continue his work and headed to Renata's new apartment. I found her surrounded by officers and social workers, her face gaunt from crying and worry. When she saw me, she ran to me, hugging me as if I were her last anchor of hope. There were no words of comfort that could ease her anguish or mine. We could only wait, praying that Leo would come to his senses or that the police would find them soon. The next few hours were a blur of calls, statements, and agonizing waiting. Night fell with no news. Renata refused to rest, pacing restlessly around the small apartment, constantly checking her phone in case Leo tried to contact her. Around midnight, when exhaustion was beginning to overwhelm us, her phone finally rang. An unknown number. Renata put it on speaker with trembling hands. "Hello, Renata. It's me." Leo's voice was strangely calm. Theo is fine. He's asleep now. I don't want you to worry. Where are you? Why did you take him like this? The whole police force is looking for you. I know, it was the only way to get you all to listen. I need my father to come alone without the police. Then I'll return Theo, and we'll sort this out. I exchanged a look with Renata. The officer present was already signaling for her to keep the conversation going while they tried to trace the call. Leo, it's me, I said, taking the phone, trying to control the mix of rage and fear that was consuming me. What are you trying to do, Leo? Using your own son as a hostage? It's not like that, Dad. Theo is perfectly safe. I just need you to come and talk, without cops around this time. A real father-son conversation. Where? At Uncle Sebastian's cabin. Remember it? Where we used to go fishing when I was a kid. Of course I remembered it. The cabin belonged to my late wife's brother, abandoned years ago after his death. Located on the shore of a small lake about 30 miles from the city, it had been our occasional summer retreat when Leo was little. I know where it is. When? Tomorrow at dawn. Come alone. If I see any police, we're leaving immediately and you'll never see us again. I'll be there, I promised. But Leo, think about what you're doing. This only makes your situation worse. My situation can't get any worse, Dad, he replied bitterly. Tomorrow at dawn, alone. The call ended abruptly. The officer who had been coordinating the trace attempt shook his head. They hadn't had enough time to pinpoint the signal. You can't go alone, Renata declared immediately. It's dangerous. He's desperate, armed, and he has my grandson, I finished. I won't risk Theo's safety. I'll go as he asks. Lieutenant Riley, who had arrived while we were on the phone with Leo, intervened. Mr. Hayes, I understand your concern, but we can't let you put yourself at risk like this. Let us handle it. How? By surrounding the cabin with armed police? Risking Leo panicking? My voice rose unintentionally. I know my son. Right now he's unpredictable, but I don't think he'll hurt Theo or me if I cooperate. If he sees police, he'll run, and then we'll be in a completely uncertain scenario. The lieutenant considered my words, his expression torn between professional duty and human understanding of the situation. I have a proposal. You will go alone, as your son asks, but with a hidden microphone and a tactical team at a distance, out of visual range of the cabin, but close enough to intervene if necessary. It was a reasonable compromise. I assured the lieutenant that I knew the terrain around the cabin well and could show them the best spots to position themselves without being detected. We spent the next few hours planning meticulously. On a map of the area, I pointed out the access points to the cabin, the areas of dense vegetation where they could hide, and potential escape routes Leo might use. I also explained the layout of the cabin's interior, a single large room with a small kitchen at one end and a basic bathroom, windows on 3 of its 4 walls. At 4 a.m., they fitted me with a discreet microphone under my shirt and a small tracking device. I insisted on driving myself despite my cast, so as not to arouse suspicion. Lieutenant Riley and his team would leave half an hour later via an alternate route to get into position. Before leaving, I hugged Renata, promising to bring Theo back. Be careful, she pleaded, her eyes red from crying and lack of sleep. Not just for Theo, but for yourself. You're the closest thing I've had to a father in years. Her words moved me deeply, giving me renewed strength to face what was coming. Dawn was just beginning to break when I reached the dirt road leading to the cabin. Memories of past summers contrasted painfully with the current situation. Where there had once been laughter and fishing lessons, there was now fear and the echo of wrong choices. The cabin finally came into view, barely visible in the dim light, a rustic wooden structure darkened by time and weather. Next to it, I recognized Leo's old sedan. At least they were still there. I parked and waited a few minutes, aware that Leo was probably watching me from inside. Finally gathering all my courage, I got out of the car and walked toward the cabin. The door opened before I could knock. Leo appeared in the doorway, his figure silhouetted against the faint interior light. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. You came alone, he stated more than asked, scanning the road behind me. As I promised, I replied. Where is Theo? Leo stepped aside, allowing me to enter. The cabin was much as I remembered it, though more dilapidated. On an old sofa, Theo was sleeping soundly, covered with a blanket. I instinctively moved toward him, but Leo stopped me with a gesture. He's fine. Just sleeping. I don't want to wake him yet. I looked at my grandson with concern, checking for any signs that he was okay. His breathing seemed normal, his expression peaceful. There were no visible signs of mistreatment. "What do you want, Leo?" I finally asked, turning to my son. "Why all this?" "Sit down," he said, pointing to a rickety chair. He remained standing, his right hand unnervingly close to his waistband, where I imagined he kept the gun. "I needed you to really listen to me, without police, without outside pressure." "I'm listening," I said simply, sitting where he indicated. Leo began to pace, his nervous energy manifesting physically. "The people I owe money to, they're not just loan sharks, Dad. They're dangerous people connected to cartels. They don't accept excuses or payment plans. You either give them what they demand or they take what you value. And that's why you kidnapped your own son? To use him as a bargaining chip?" "No," he exclaimed, momentarily agitated before catching himself, glancing at Theo to make sure he hadn't woken him. "Don't you get it? I didn't bring Theo here to pressure you. I brought him here to protect him." His explanation baffled me. "Protect him from what?" "When I met you at the cafe and you refused to help me without conditions, I knew I was finished. They contacted me that same night. They knew about Theo, about Renata. They said if I didn't pay in 48 hours, they would go after them first to teach me a lesson." A chill ran down my spine. If what he was saying was true, the situation was even more dire than I had imagined. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Leo laughed bitterly. "The police against these people? They have contacts everywhere. Besides, who would believe me now? I'm a fugitive with multiple charges against me." "So you took Theo and ran. It was the only way to keep him safe while I came up with a plan. And I needed you to come, for you to understand the gravity of the situation without intermediaries." I looked over at Theo again, still sleeping, oblivious to everything. If what Leo said was true, my grandson had been in danger without our knowledge. But something didn't quite add up. If you really wanted to protect him, why didn't you explain it to Renata? Why didn't you seek help through legitimate channels? Leo's expression hardened. "Because no one believes me anymore. You've said it yourself many times. I've lied too much. I've broken too many promises. I needed to act fast, and this was the only way I could think of." His words held a painful truth. Years of deception and manipulation had eroded any credibility he might have had, even when he was telling the truth. "So what now?" I asked. "What's your plan?" Leo came closer, sitting across from me with an expression I hadn't seen on his face in years, that of a son genuinely seeking his father's help. "I need that money, Dad, not for me, but to pay off this debt and make sure they leave my family alone. After that, I'll turn myself in. I'll accept treatment. I'll serve whatever sentence is necessary. But first, I need to know that Theo and Renata will be safe." I wanted to believe him. A part of me saw the boy I once raised, the son who once had dreams and principles before addiction consumed him. But another part remembered all the broken promises, all the wasted opportunities. How do I know this time is different? That this isn't just another manipulation to get money? Leo held my gaze without flinching. "Because this time, it's not about me, it's about Theo. You can hate me, you can disown me after this, but I know you love Theo as much as I do. You won't let anything happen to him if you can help it." Just then, a soft moan interrupted us. Theo was beginning to wake up, rubbing his eyes with small fists. As he opened his eyes and saw me, his face lit up with a smile that melted some of my reservations. "Grandpa!" he exclaimed, jumping up to hug me. I wrapped my good arm around him, feeling his small, warm body against mine, a tangible reminder of what was at stake. "Hey, champ," I greeted him, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Are you okay, Theo?" He nodded enthusiastically. "Dad said we were going camping as a surprise. Are you staying with us, too? We're going to go fishing, just like in the stories you tell me." His innocent excitement was a painful contrast to the reality of the situation. I looked at Leo, who was watching the scene with a mixture of love and guilt. "Theo," Leo intervened gently, Why don't you go wash your face in the bathroom while Grandpa and I finish talking? Then we'll all have breakfast together. Once Theo disappeared into the small bathroom, Leo turned to me with renewed urgency. We don't have much time. I need an answer, Dad. Will you help me protect my son? The question hung between us, heavy with implications. I knew the tactical team was listening, probably preparing to move in. I also knew that my answer would define not only Leo's immediate fate, but potentially the safety of Theo and Renata. In that critical moment, as I weighed the risks and the options, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Leo's hand, which had been near his waistband the whole time, finally revealed what it was hiding. It wasn't a gun he was clutching with such apprehension. It was a detonator. The detonator in Leo's hand looked like something out of a nightmare. A small black device with a single red button, so simple and yet so deadly. My heart stopped for an instant as I processed the implications. What have you done? I whispered, trying to keep my voice from betraying the panic I felt. Leo followed my gaze to the detonator and gave a bitter smile. Insurance, I needed a plan B. A plan B? Explosives? With your son here? Disbelief and horror washed over me. I never imagined Leo's desperation would lead to this. Calm down, he replied, lowering his voice so Theo wouldn't hear from the bathroom. It's not what you think. The explosives are in my car, not in the cabin. It's just a precaution in case the police try to move in. The momentary relief of knowing Theo wasn't sitting on top of explosives was quickly replaced by a new worry. The tactical team surrounding us, if they saw the detonator theater, they might storm the cabin immediately, triggering the very disaster we were trying to avoid. Leo, this is insane. Thinking about explosives, endangering your own son. You don't get it, he interrupted, his voice tense but controlled. These people gave me an ultimatum. If I don't pay them, they go after what I value most. These aren't empty threats. They've killed for less. The sound of running water from the bathroom reminded me that Theo could return at any moment. I needed to find a solution, and fast, before the situation escalated beyond control. Give me the detonator, I said, holding out my left hand. Let's talk like civilized people, without threats. Leo backed away, clutching the device. Not until you promise to help me. I need that money today, Dad. If I don't pay by nightfall, they'll come looking for me, and they won't hesitate to hurt Theo or Renata to send a message. I could see the genuine fear in his eyes, a fear that went beyond his own consequences. Despite everything, Leo loved his son. That love, though twisted by desperation and addiction, was still real. I'll help you, I finally agreed, but on my terms. First, you give me that detonator. Second, we return Theo to his mother safe and sound immediately. Third, you turn yourself into the authorities after we've dealt with your creditors. Leo weighed my words, searching for tricks or traps. Finally, he nodded slowly. Okay, but I need a guarantee you'll keep your end of the deal. My word isn't enough. I have never failed you, Leo. Unlike you, I have always kept my promises. A flash of shame crossed his face, followed by resignation. You're right, you've always been a man of your word. With cautious movements, he handed me the detonator. I took it quickly, making sure not to accidentally press the button. Just then, Theo emerged from the bathroom, his face fresh and his eyes bright with anticipation for the supposed camping trip. Are we having breakfast now? He asked, oblivious to the tension in the air. Soon, champ, I replied, trying to sound normal, as I discreetly slipped the detonator into my pocket. But first, we have a little change of plans. Confusion flickered across his young face. We're not camping? Leo stepped in, kneeling down to Theo's Livio. Something important came up, champ. We have to go back to the city first, but I promise we'll do that camping trip soon. Okay? Theo nodded, though visibly disappointed. That childish ability to accept changes in plans without too much questioning was a blessing right now. Let's get your things, Leo continued, guiding Theo to the sofa where his small backpack was. I used that moment to move to the nearest window and give a discreet signal, hoping the tactical team would understand they needed to stand down, that the situation was, for now, under control. While Theo packed his things, I spoke quietly with Leo about the practical details. We would go to the bank first to get the money, then to a safe location where he could deliver the payment to his creditors, and finally return Theo to Renata. After that, I'm taking you to the station myself, I concluded. No tricks, no running away. It's the only way to start fixing this mess. Leo nodded, his expression a mix of resignation and relief. I guess I always knew it would end like this. I just wanted to protect Theo and Renata first. We left the cabin cautiously. I knew the tactical team was watching us, probably confused by the change in plans they couldn't have heard in detail. I hoped my calm demeanor would signal to them that the situation was under control. We decided to take my car, leaving Leo's and the supposed explosives at the cabin. Theo sat in the back seat, excited about the unexpected adventure with his dad and grandpa, completely unaware of the danger and tension surrounding us. Halfway to the city, my phone started ringing. It was Lieutenant Riley, no doubt worried about our unplanned movements. I have to answer this, I told Leo, who tensed and nodded. I briefly explained the situation to the lieutenant, assuring him that Theo was safe and that we had reached an agreement. I asked him to let us proceed as planned, promising to keep him updated every step of the way. This is highly irregular, Mr. Hayes, he responded with clear concern. I can't authorize a suspect under investigation to move freely through the city. I understand your position, Lieutenant, but I'm asking you to trust me. If we intervene now, we could put innocent people at risk. There are explosives involved. That last piece of information changed his tone immediately. After a brief silence, he reluctantly agreed, but with strict conditions. They would follow us discreetly and be ready to intervene at the slightest sign of danger. As we neared the city, I watched Leo out of the corner of my eye. He was tense, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors for police cars or suspicious vehicles. But there was something else in his expression, a deep weariness, as if he had finally accepted that the game was over. Our first stop was a fast food restaurant, so Theo could have breakfast. As he happily ate his pancakes, Leo and I continued to discuss the details in low voices. Who are these people you owe money to? I asked. I need to know who we're dealing with. Leo hesitated before answering. They call themselves the Falcons. They operate mostly up north but have been expanding. They started as loan sharks, but now they're into all sorts of illegal operations. And how did you end up in debt to them? Shame clouded his face. I started losing at the regular casinos. When no one would lend me money anymore, a friend introduced me to these people. The terms were brutal, but I was desperate. I thought I could win enough to pay them off and get out, but I just kept losing. The familiar story of addiction, the delusion that the next bet would fix everything, the downward spiral that only got deeper with each attempt to escape. After breakfast, we drove to the bank. Leo waited in the car with Theo while I went in alone. I knew the security cameras would identify him immediately, triggering a police response that would complicate our plan. Carmen, the manager who had helped me before, recognized me instantly. Her expression grew worried when she saw my serious face. I need to withdraw a significant amount of cash, I informed her bluntly. $50,000. Her eyes widened in surprise and alarm. Mr. Hayes, that's a huge portion of your savings. Are you sure? Last time you mentioned concerns about your son trying to access your money. I am absolutely sure, I replied firmly. It's a family emergency. Something in my tone must have conveyed the gravity of the situation because she didn't press the matter. After completing the necessary paperwork, I left the bank with the sum, a sum that represented decades of honest work and sacrifice. Back in the car, Leo briefly examined the stack of bills before tucking it into his jacket. I could see the relief on his face, as if a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Thanks, Dad, he murmured. I know I don't deserve your help after everything I've done. I didn't reply. My feelings toward him were too complicated at that moment. A mix of paternal love, disappointment, worry, and yes, anger for putting us all in this impossible situation. Our next stop was a strip mall on the outskirts of the city. According to Leo, he had arranged to meet an intermediary for the Falcons there, a public yet discreet location for the transaction. Wait here, Leo said, getting ready to leave the car. It'll be quick. No, I objected firmly. Theo stays, but I'm going with you. I want to see who you're giving this money to. Leo started to protest, but seeing my determination, he reluctantly gave in. Fine, but Stay back and don't interfere. These people are dangerous. Theo looked at us curiously. Where are you going? Your dad and I just have to talk to someone, I explained. You stay here and don't open the door for anyone. We'll be back in a few minutes. He nodded solemnly, taking his responsibility of guarding the car very seriously. Leo and I walked toward a coffee shop at the end of the mall. At this early hour, it was nearly empty, except for one man sitting in a corner, watching us intently as we approached. He was an ordinary-looking individual, which made him all the more unsettling. He didn't look like a stereotypical criminal. He could have been an office worker or a teacher, but his cold, calculating eyes revealed a hardness acquired only in violent environments. Just you, he said to Leo as we neared his table. The old man waits outside. He's my father, Leo replied. He's with me on this. The man sized me up with a piercing gaze before shrugging. Whatever, did you bring it all? Leo pulled out the bundle of cash and slid it across the table. The man took it casually, as if receiving such amounts was a daily occurrence for him. It probably was. Does this cover the entire debt? I asked, unable to stop myself. The man looked at me in surprise, as if a piece of furniture had suddenly spoken. Then he gave a humorless smile. No, old man, this barely covers 1 month's interest, but it's a good start. My heart sank. All the sacrifice, the danger, handing over my life savings, and it barely covered the interest. The trap Leo had fallen into was even worse than I had imagined. Wait, I interjected as the man pocketed the money. That money is to settle my son's debt completely, not for interest. The man laughed openly this time. We set the terms, old man. Your son knew that when he took the loan. Leo looked defeated, avoiding my gaze. I'm sorry, Dad. It's like he says, the rates are predatory. A cold fury washed over me. Years of discipline as a carpenter had taught me to control my emotions, to keep my hands steady even in moments of frustration. That discipline allowed me to speak with apparent calm. So there's no guarantee you'll leave my son and his family alone, even after this payment. The man shrugged again. Business is business. As long as he keeps paying, he won't have any problems. It was a vicious cycle designed never to end. Leo would be trapped forever, and by extension, so would we all. This ends here, I declared with a firmness that surprised even me. My son is turning himself over to the authorities today. He'll be under police protection. You won't be able to touch him. The man's eyes narrowed, all pretense of civility gone. Bad decision, old man. Very bad. There's still his kid, the ex-wife, who will also be under protection, I interrupted. And if anything happens to them, if you even get near them, the police will know exactly who to look for. As I spoke, I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. 2 men with the discreet but unmistakable presence of undercover cops had taken strategic positions near our table. Lieutenant Riley had kept his word to follow us. The man noticed them too. His expression shifted subtly as he calculated his options. With a fluid movement, he stood up, the money now secured in his jacket. This isn't over, he warned in a low voice. No one just walks away from business with us. It's over, I replied with a calm I didn't feel. And take that money, consider it the final payment. The man shot us one last threatening look before heading for the exit. The undercover cops followed him discreetly, likely to identify his vehicle and any possible accomplices. Leo and I were left alone, the weight of what had just happened settling between us. You didn't have to do that, Leo muttered. Now they'll come after all of us. They were already coming after us, I replied. The difference is that now we'll face this legally, with proper protection. No more secrets, no more trying to solve everything on your own. We returned to the car where Theo was waiting patiently. His face lit up when he saw us, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. Are we going to Mom's now? He asked hopefully. Yes, champ, I replied, trying to sound normal. We're going to your mom's. During the drive to the apartment where Renata was anxiously waiting, Leo remained silent, his gaze lost in the cityscape passing by the window. I could imagine his thoughts, the uncertain future, the prison time awaiting him, the consequences of years of bad decisions finally catching up to him. When we arrived, Renata ran out before we even came to a complete stop. She tore open the back door and wrapped Theo in a desperate hug, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "My baby, are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine, Mom," Theo replied, confused by all the emotion. "We went camping with Dad and Grandpa. It was fun." Renata looked at Leo, who had gotten out of the car and was watching the scene with a mixture of regret and resignation. There was no hatred in her eyes, only a deep sadness for what could have been. "I'm sorry," Leo said simply, "for everything." Before Renata could respond, a patrol car pulled up beside us. Lieutenant Riley got out, accompanied by 2 officers. "Leo Hayes," he announced formally, "you are under arrest for multiple charges, including assault, kidnapping, and making threats." Leo offered no resistance as they cuffed him. His face held a strange calm, as if he had finally accepted his fate. "Dad," he called out before they put him in the car, "thanks for trying to help me, even when I didn't deserve it. Take care of Theo for me." I nodded, unable to find the right words for that moment. Despite everything that had happened, he was still my son, the boy I once carried on my shoulders, whom I taught to carve wood and to tell the difference between types of trees. As the patrol car drove away, Theo came over to me, confusion on his little face. "Where are they taking Dad?" I knelt in front of him, searching for the words to explain something so complex to an 8-year-old. "Your dad needs some help, Theo. He's made some mistakes and now he has to face them. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you." "When is he coming back?" The innocent question struck my heart. "I don't know, champ. It will probably be a while. But in the meantime, your mom and I will always be here for you." Renata came over and placed a hand on my shoulder in a gesture of solidarity. "Thank you for bringing him back," she said softly. "I don't know how you did it, but I will be eternally grateful." "It was Leo who chose to do the right thing in the end," I replied. "Despite everything, he's still his father." The following days were a whirlwind of statements, meetings with lawyers, and sessions with social workers. The full story came out. Leo's addiction, his debts to loan sharks tied to organized crime, the desperate attempt to get money from me, and finally, the kidnapping of Theo. Thanks to his cooperation and the information he provided about the Falcons, the authorities were able to launch a broader investigation into the criminal organization. It wasn't much consolation, but at least some good would come from this whole tragedy. As part of a plea deal, Leo received a reduced sentence, 3 years in prison, on the condition that he complete an intensive rehabilitation program for his gambling addiction. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a beginning, a path toward redemption. A month later, after they finally removed the cast from my arm, I visited Leo in the state prison. He was thinner but paradoxically looked healthier, as if the structure and lack of temptation were having a positive effect on him. "How's Theo?" was his first question. "He's good. He misses you. Renata brings him to see me twice a week. He's a strong kid." Leo nodded, his eyes misting over slightly. "Have you explained about me, about where I am?" "We told him you're in a special place where they help people with problems like yours, that you need time to heal. He understands in his own way." The conversation continued, awkward at times, emotionally charged at others. It wasn't a full reconciliation or an immediate forgiveness for everything that had happened. Those things would take time, maybe years. But it was a start, a fragile bridge over the abyss that Leo's actions had created. Before I left, Leo stopped me with an unexpected question. "Do you think you'll ever be able to trust me again?" The question deserved an honest answer. "I don't know, son. Trust once it's broken is hard to rebuild, but I'm willing to give you the chance to try me. One day at a time, one decision at a time." He nodded, accepting my answer as fair. "That's more than I deserve." Leaving the prison, I felt a strange sense of relief. Not because the problems were over, there were still many challenges ahead, but because we had finally stopped pretending, stopped avoiding the painful truth. Leo was facing the consequences of his actions, and while the road would be hard, at least it was a road forward. This afternoon, when I picked Theo up from school as I'd promised Renata, his face lit up when he saw me waiting at the gate. He ran toward me with the carefree energy of childhood, his backpack bouncing against his back. "Grandpa, are we going to your workshop today? Will you teach me how to make a wooden boat like you promised? I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. Of course, champ. It's time you learned the secrets of carpentry, just like your dad did at your age. As we walked hand in hand toward my house, where the little workshop waited with its tools and scraps of wood, I thought about the cycles of life, about how chances for redemption can arise from even the most painful circumstances. My son had broken my arm because I refused to give him control of my bank account. But what truly cost him dearly wasn't the prison sentence or the legal consequences. It was finally realizing the value of what he had been about to lose forever. His father's trust, his son's love, and his own dignity. Some lessons are learned brutally through pain and loss, but if that learning leads to real change, then maybe the cost, however high, is worth it. Only time will tell if Leo has truly learned his lesson. In the meantime, I have a grandson to teach and a life to rebuild, one plank at a time, one day at a time, just as I've always done. Friends, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel, Whispers of Experience. You might help someone who is going through something similar.